Comparison price for Monday, March 17th, 2025. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all who celebrate. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris alongside Jeff Paterson, sitting in for Blake Price today, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, who had himself a weekend hitting switches and conducting things. How are you? Thanks for making time for us today. Busy rink-wide weekend, so appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm struggling. I'm wearing purple. I guess I got a little green there. Not really playing the role.
No. Are you Irish?
Well, no, but
yeah,
I've got kids with Irish names, not really by design, but it just happened that way.
Is she Irish?
No.
No. Okay.
We just like the names.
No Irish. I'm not Irish in the least as well, so.
Canucks went all in. I have to say, last night it was their St. Patrick's Day game.
Of course.
Media meal, very much an Irish menu.
Corned beef and cabbage?
There was green vegetables. Does that count?
I'm not sure.
No. They had green cookies in the press box.
Oh.
So, had a few of those. I'll cop to having a few of those.
We have a big show coming for you because the Vancouver Canucks continue to confound. Just when you think this team is hitting its stride, you have these step-back games. So we're going to get to it, what happened against Utah, and look at the road ahead here. But first, we'll start with our Sony Mitsubishi poll question. What is the main reason behind the Canucks' offensive struggles? You can vote for a lack of personnel. You can vote for a lack of execution. You can vote for the coach's system. What said you?
I say execution. You've got players that have scored in this league under this coach. It's a long list. We don't need to go into the names, but I think everybody knows them. You get 6 minutes of power play time in the third period with essentially your playoff position hanging in the balance. It comes down to execution. And so I get that this is a coach who's defense first and staples and structures and board battles and all that kind of stuff. But I have yet to have anybody, Matt, tell me, how come Quinn Hughes can get to 60 points?
Yeah, and the others can't. Yeah, exactly.
And nobody else can.
Well, he's that good a player. Look, I think
but you got other good players.
Well, that's it. And I'm with you. I voted lack of execution as well. I think you can make a case for all three. This system certainly isn't blow the doors off, go up and down hockey and score a lot of goals. The lack of personnel, of course, without Phillip. I mean, JT Miller to Filip Chytil was a downgrade offensively to begin with. And when he leaves the lineup, clearly you're left wanting at center ice. But I voted lack of execution because you've got a number of, in some cases, very good offensive players like Elias Pettersson and Brock Boeser who just haven't brought it this year. And in some cases, offensive players who are better than what they have shown, like Dakota Joshua and Nils Höglander. I know Höglander's been better recently, but so you add all of that up, and particularly, like, how many games in the third period, we're going to get into it here, Jeff, how many games in the third period have been there for the taking where the opposition's star players have stepped up and the Vancouver Canucks players haven't? As you tweeted last night, the 11th time the Canucks were held to a single goal in a game, the 28th time this season they scored two or fewer. That's 42% of the games. 2 goals 14 times, 1 goal 11 times, 0 goals 3 times, and in a lot of cases, like last night, games where a point or two are available despite the lack of offensive output. Yesterday was particularly soul-crushing. We'll get into the blown power plays in the third period. We've been also looking at this with the Hamalytics account. Zone entries, controlled attempts last night, 21, successful 17, uncontrolled 38, successful just 7. chip and chase. It really is chasing, but it's not been retrieving all that often.
That's just
of
it.
late.
I mean, you can dump it in, but it's not effective unless somebody gets in there and gets after it and gets the puck back and goes to work. And so another night where Utah's speed was noticeable. And again, no Filip Chytil. So, yeah, I mean, a team that's not particularly mobile at the best of times now take out one of its best skaters. But just that first period, like, it was all the Canucks could do, Matt, to get the puck out of their own zone and get tired bodies off the ice and get new ones on so that they could get in there and defend. This is Utah. Like, they've got some high-end skill, but it's Utah. They're a flawed hockey club, like so many of them, right there around the playoff bar with the Vancouver Canucks. And, I guess, I mean, maybe when all is said and done, we will have been fooled by that third period in Calgary the other night, where we all were like, where has that been? 17 shots, come from behind, earn a victory when trailing after two periods, all of that. This was 9 shots last night in the third period. No goals for the Vancouver Canucks. And I don't know. I just foolishly, I guess I wanted to believe that the third period in Calgary might unlock this notion that, hey, it's in there somewhere. And as a reference point earlier in the week. And, you're not going to get Chicago on the schedule anymore. Done with the Blackhawks. Can't beat them up anymore. So don't get fooled by what happened on Saturday when they scored 6 goals on 15 shots. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, done with the Blackhawks. Only one more San Jose should also be noted. The other thing, Jeff, is getting shots through. I mean, the lack of shots was one thing, but the number of attempts through that missed, 16 missed, 18 blocked last night. So you wind up with 34 attempts that do not hit the goal. There's actually not anything wrong with the shot attempt numbers last night. It was getting them on goal, and that has been a refrain of Rick Tocchet through the year, through the season. You got to get you got to get the puck on the net. I wanted to ask you about this. What is wrong with Brock Boeser, sir? It is 2 assists in 8 March games. It was 2 goals and 3 points in 8 February games. He has 5 points in his last 18 games, seeking a rich contract. What to you is a matter with number 6?
Well, certainly we've always known throughout his career that he's not a guy that generates on his own. He needs that service, as we say. And he and JT Miller had formed pretty good chemistry, had played together basically exclusively for 2 solid years. And JT, I mean, one of his underrated skills, I think, was his passing, his setup ability. And so Brock's talked about it earlier in the week. He said, I'm struggling without him, but, I have to adjust. I have no other choice. They tried him with Filip Chytil. That feels like oil and water. You got fastest guy in straight line and a player in Brock that struggles to keep up to pace. Now, Chytil hasn't shown to be a great playmaker yet. Tries to generate a lot on his own. Now he's out of the lineup. But yeah, I mean, any way you cut it, Matt, the numbers are not pretty for Brock Boeser. And look, I'll cut him a little bit of slack. I do think that all the trade talk leading into the deadline was a distraction. He's probably contemplating his future. Am I here? Am I not? Do I have a foot out the door? Now here comes another contract offer. Like, there's a lot going on there, a lot of noise around him. But he's gone 12 games since the Four Nations, has not scored a goal for the Vancouver Canucks. They have been in just about every single game, all those tight ones that you talked about. So many games have gone to the third period where a goal here or a goal there would be a massive boost for the Vancouver Canucks. And one of their go-to guys, their 40-goal guy from a year ago, doesn't have a goal in the last 12. But it's not just those last 12. Like, JT got traded at the end of January. Brock Boeser has 4 goals in calendar year 2025. So he played some with JT Miller and still wasn't productive. I mean, dollar bills are falling out of his back pocket by the game here. Like, he is costing himself significant money. And there are 15 games remaining. I have to think that there are a few more goals left in him, but it's the fact that he's a volume shooter.
Mm-hmm.
He has 14 shots in this 12-game run where he hasn't scored a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So
and here's the thing, Jeff, and we've discussed it several times here in the second half of this season. It does not look and sound like management wants this player back. But even if Brock Boeser were to look around now and go, bad second half, probably can't get what I thought I was going to get on the open market, want to be here in Vancouver, let's go back to the table, Ben Hankinson, and do a hometown discount for the Canucks. Jeff, I'm not sure the Canucks can do that deal until they have a set-up centerman in place, or unless you absolutely believe, and look, they've been playing together here a little bit, but I'm not sure the evidence is there, unless you absolutely believe that Paterson is the winger for Boeser. Re-signing Boeser before getting a second-line centerman, in some cases, could be cart before the horse. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess I wonder, like, okay, so this is the only NHL home Brock Boeser has known. Has been here a while now. Like, he's got a big decision to make. If he looks at the direction of the hockey club, he knows what's here. But maybe he wants to explore what's out there in the great beyond. Like, there are a lot of franchises in the NHL, Matt, that go to the playoffs on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. He has seen a lot of losing in the decade that he has been a Vancouver Canuck. So, whether there was this talk of the comments Patrick Allvin made or at the deadline about the offers they got, or the comments that he made about, hey, he scored 40, but he should have had 50. I just wonder if Brock at the end of the season says, you know what, like, I'm going to go try it somewhere else.
Yeah,
and I can't blame him on that.
Yeah, and perhaps somewhere where he's not as frontline a player with the pressure to succeed and score, where he can blend, to use Frank Corrado's word, a little bit more as part of a more robust offense where there are centermen and people who can get you the puck.
But saying all of that, he is a Vancouver Canuck for the final 15 games of the season, and if this team is going to achieve, he has to be a whole lot better than he has been over the last 3 months.
The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, and they want to get EP40 back to the top. Everyone at the dealership beyond rallying around the hometown hero every time he scores a point, like last night. You save $500 the next day on any new or pre-owned vehicle. If he gets 2 points, save $1,000, so on and so on. You just got to mention Sekeres Price, and that offer valid till the next game day, so you have till tomorrow. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue. Let's get to our top story, Jeff. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, Opportunity Lost. Fall 3-1 to Utah. Failed to create separation from the playoff pack. You will find the Canucks still on the final wild card spot today, but that's not by points percentage. Calgary has 2 games in hand now, sitting on the same number of points. The Flames begin their big Eastern road trip. We've talked about this. They're in Toronto tonight, so that'll be one of the games made up. They're actually on a back-to-back. They're tomorrow at the Garden against JT Miller and the Rangers, but of course the Canucks are playing that Winnipeg tomorrow, so they'll make up the other game down the road. St. Louis here is an emerging story.
Yes.
Tied on 73 points with the St. Louis Blues are the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks are 2 points ahead of Calgary, let me correct. Tied on 73 points with the St. Louis Blues. Vancouver with a game in hand, and of course they play Thursday in Missouri. More on them in a second here, Jeff, because I saw your tweet. Now just 2 up on Utah, even in games there. And Utah got them, this year?
Clean sweep. Well, Canucks got a single point for an OTL, but
did not win a game against the Utah Hockey
points, Club. Net 5 points.
We'll go into next season winless against the Utah Hockey Club. They will change their name, and so they will forever be winless against the Utah.
And only scored 4 goals in those 3 games, too. So
and
Canucks
mentioned the speed. Yeah. And missed a chance, if we can still look up words, missed a chance with that Minnesota loss against St. Louis. St. Louis swept the weekend. They had back-to-back Saturday, Sunday, they swept them. Missed a chance to move just 4 back of Minnesota for the first wild card spot, and that may come in costly if St. Louis keeps up the hot play. More on them for a second, but let's first hear from the captain. Here's Quinn Hughes on the opportunity missed last night.
I think it should take away much. I mean, obviously we could have separated ourselves today, and I think that was something that, everyone knew how big that would be, but, now we're just still in the same position we've been in, which is, have to, do or die pretty much every day, and, yeah, it's exciting, so everyone should be up in here and excited.
He didn't sound very excited there after some short answers.
He played 11 minutes and 48 seconds of the third period.
He was out of wind. And look, had they won the game, I think he probably would have said the same thing. Hockey players are conditioned that way, and it's not like they would have been so far in ahead where they could kick their heels back and cool. No.
For sure.
Here's your tweet, though, and here's what I want to spend a minute or two on. St. Louis looks like it's in the driver's seat for Wild Card 2. 8 home games versus 6 on the road. Only 4 of the 14 remaining against teams currently on a playoff spot. Their final game's at home against Utah, if it comes down to that. And suddenly, St. Louis has emerged as the best team since the Four Nations break in February. They are 8-2-2. And as mentioned, the Canucks are going to see them on Thursday at their barn.
Yeah, so the Canucks are 5-7 since the Four Nations break. 8-2-2. That's 18 points. Canucks have picked up 10. There's your 8 point. At the break, Matt, the Canucks were 8 clear of the St. Louis Blues. I think they thought they had distanced themselves from the Blues. They were an afterthought. Wait a sec. The Blues are back from the dead somehow. And Jordan Binnington, obviously at Four Nations, maybe regained some confidence. He's been good for them. All the talk about Braden Shen and how many places was he traded, and ultimately he stays there in St. Louis, played his 1,000th game in the National Hockey League recently. He's performing. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, their best players, Dylan Holloway, all stepping up. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't see this one coming. They made the coaching change earlier in the season, but 8-2-2, it's hard to ignore. And so you look at their schedule. Their next 6 games for the St. Louis Blues, 3 of them are against Nashville. 3 of the next 6 are against the Predators, 1 against Chicago, and the one on Thursday night against the Vancouver Canucks. So while the Canucks have the Jets to worry about and then the Blues and then out on the road to the New York area, this is a St. Louis team that's sitting there pretty now all of a sudden. Yeah. So, yeah, when I look at this race, I would say that the St. Louis Blues, far fewer playoff opponents, teams that are above the playoff bar right now on their remaining schedule compared to the Canucks, who still have 2 with Winnipeg and 2 with Vegas and Dallas and Colorado. The Canucks are going to have to find ways to win those hockey games. They're not going to win them all, but they probably have to chip away at 3 of those 6 games that I just mentioned. Seems like a pretty tall order for a team that just can't score goals.
Penguins, Red Wings, Canadians, there are a lot of below the playoff line there. I mean, the only good news vis-a-vis that 3 games against Nashville, 2 of those games are in Music City, where the Predators have been okay. It's just on the road where Nashville's absolutely been awful this year. Okay, and Jeff does this a lot on Rink Wide, so I feel bad in asking you to relive it, Jeff, because it was torturous to watch.
Ugh.
But you have 6 minutes of power play time in the third period, including that double minor on Clayton Keller for his high stick on Brock Boeser. And you not only don't come away with the goal, but I think you could almost argue you killed whatever momentum you would have had if you had momentum after the 4-minute double minor. Let's hear from head coach Rick Tocchet on what didn't happen on that power play, and then let's discuss a little bigger picture, broader lens here, Jeff, about this power play.
Yeah, we just looked at it, me and Yogi, the coaches, were a little frustrated. There was a lot of plays there to be made, we just didn't make them. It was a little bit slow. We needed somebody to take charge of it. There was opportunities that, they had 3 guys on one of our guys. If it goes low, we should attack. I mean, there's just plays there. I don't know if we're tired or our thinking process, but I agree. We didn't get much.
16th in power play percentage, so right at mid-pack in the league at 22.3. Net power play percentage, 19.2, also 16th in the league. Twice last night in his post-game scrum, or media availability, Tocchet talked about how there were plays down low. Even in the other clip said it was obvious, and yet the players still aren't executing those plays, Jeff. Help me with that one.
Right. So, again, for the people that want to run Rick Tocchet out of town, take the coach out of the equation for a sec. Like, don't worry about the guy behind the bench. Third period of a game that you have to have, you put your 5 best players out there. These guys have been doing this since they were kids. You've got 5 skaters, the other team has 4. Just snap it around and find a way to generate a goal. Like,
it's really not that complicated. Like, you've been playing hockey your whole life. These guys have been playing power play their whole life, and there are passes and plays to be made to open guys that seemingly aren't being made.
And what frustrated me was, this entire market rose up last week when Elias Pettersson finally hit the reins with a one-timer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't even see a sniff of them working to get that shot in that third period. And if teams want to shade and take that away, then that speaks to what Tocchet said. Then there is more ice open elsewhere. Quick puck movement, create those odd number situations, and then attack. And look, with Quinn Hughes here and no JT Miller now and no Bo Horvat, the power play used to JT on the left side, get it to the inside, Bo with all the bumper goals.
Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of weapons there.
That play has completely come out of their playbook.
Mm-hmm. The bumper play.
Yeah, they just never work into the interior anymore.
I know.
So you got Garland on one side, who's not a shooting threat. You've got Petey, who is reluctant to shoot for whatever reason, and so it gets pretty predictable that it's going to get onto the stick of Quinn Hughes. Now, Quinn Hughes himself isn't predictable, but it just feels like they defer so much to Quinn Hughes. And who scored their only goal last night? Yeah, Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
On a power play. To me, last night felt like 17 guys standing around and waiting for 43 to
do something. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you've referenced it at least once this year in some of our conversations. But letting Mike Yeo, an experienced NHL hand, both an assistant and former head coach, go, and Rick Tocchet saying, Yogi Svechkovsky has earned it. We're going to give him a promotion. He had been a development coach, his first crack really in the NHL on a big NHL bench, and that Rick and Yogi would in tandem oversee the power play unit. Was that a mistake? Would they have been better off keeping a more experienced NHL hand power play architect on the bench? And not just muddling it, because in some cases, if you got 2 coaches responsible for it, you tell me.
I'm there at every practice. They do practice the power play a ton. Ultimately, when bullets are flying, it's a little different. But they put in the work, and I know they do a bunch of video as well. This is where I come back to this idea of taking the coaches out of it and just play on instinct and be the best players and be better than the other team's better players in some of those moments. And so, that first power play, Logan Cooley hog-ties Elias Pettersson. That power play was dreadful, and I thought it can't get a whole lot worse. And now all of a sudden you're presented with a 4-minute opportunity after Keller, the high stick on Boeser, and it was equally dreadful to the point that Rick Tocchet had the 5 right-handers out there at one point.
Yeah, I saw that. Good line by Shorty, too. Victor Tikhonov would not.
So to me, I'm of mixed minds here. That is this a conversation for them to have moving forward? Our head's going to roll at the end of the season. Is there room to bring in this power play specialist? I think all those things have to be looked at. But did they lose last night because Mike Yeo wasn't behind the bench? I'm going to say I can't get there, and that's why I put it back just on the poll question. Put it at the feet of the players here. Just you guys have done this all your lives. Just dig down and find a way to generate on the power play, and it was
here's
appalling.
The thing, because coming off the Chicago win on Saturday, Tocchet had been praising the offensive output. He had talked about they had done a lot of video work recently. He praised Connor Garland, said he was driving a line. He praised Petey and Suter. In fact, Petey, Garland, they're engaged physically in the game yesterday. Big third period moments. We referenced it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Game on the line. It's been an issue all year. And Tocchet has been increasingly laying this at the feet of the players, Jeff. What do you think is at work there? Is he messaging upstairs? Is he feathering his next nest? Is it just fair comment But game after game here now, we're hearing from the head coach, who seems to be drawing a pretty firm dividing line between coaches and what is being taught and players and what is being executed.
Yeah, and it comes back to there is frustration, and I think there's tension around the rink. They recognize, they had an 8-point lead on St. Louis not that long ago, and now it's a dead heat.
Hasn't been a happy environment this year for a number of reasons.
So
Jeff and the press
reasons.
corps can attest.
Yeah. And so, Chicago was fun because a bunch of guys scored goals, but more than that, they made plays. And I guess that speaks to just how bad the Blackhawks are, because a lot of those same guys weren't making plays against Utah. And give Utah credit. Like, they're a structured group. I like the way that they're designed. They've got speed and skill in their top six. And Matt, the bottom six is massive. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Bugstad or Lawson Krause or Jack McBain. Like, these are big boys, big dudes, and
eat up a lot of space out there.
Yeah, and so you look at the Vancouver Canucks, and not only do they look slow against Utah, but they look small against this Utah hockey club as well. So, I think some of it is Rick Tocchet looks up and down the roster and just thinks, like, it's been such a struggle for so many guys to score goals. I need a hero here. Like, who are my candidates? And so, last week was promising for Elias Pettersson. He wasn't going to score in every game down the stretch, but, it goes from him showing these signs of flashes that, yes, it looks like steps in the right direction, then to a night like last night where I know he got an assist on the Hughes goal, but it was another quiet night for 40. It was a quiet night for 6. Jake DeBrusk has been really quiet here down the stretch. And these are their guys, right? Like, those are their guys. If they're not getting it done, it's asking too much to expect that Teddy Bluger and Kiefer Sherwood are going to continually chip in with the offense that gets you over the hump.
Which brings us to Jonathan Lekramaki. And after the JT Miller trade, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, you sat in one day shortly thereafter, and we had a conversation and have had the conversation since, that when you make that sort of offense for defense subtraction that the Vancouver Canucks did, moving out a top 2 center like Miller for a less than that center Iceman and Filip Chytil, but you're stronger, stouter, more robust on defense with Marcus Pettersson, and you get a serviceable winger in Drew O'Connor, fair enough. But that heaps more pressure on guys to score. Not a lot of natural goal scorers in the lineup. Jonathan Lekramaki has the tools. Now, it is way too big of an ask for a young rookie, 20-year-old Swede playing in his first year on North American ice to be a salvation or savior for the group. But, we expressed an interest in seeing Lekramaki with the better offensive players you do have remaining here, and seeing if he can be part of the solution. Again, no one's going to put it at his feet, but being a contributor, basically scoring by committee. Lekramaki played 6 minutes and 24 seconds last night. Dave Hall of Canucks Army, and we're going to have Dave on the show tomorrow. Just let him be in Abbotsford, please. I have no issue with him being up, but if he's not going to play, then let the kid eat. What have you made of young Lekramaki, and do you think Dave's got a point there, Jeff?
Yeah, and just you can put Dave on his nose if you want to have a little fun with him. 8 minutes and 47 seconds was his full ice time. At 5-on-5, it was 7:24 and a minute and a half power play time. So maybe Dave, at the point he tweeted me, that's all it was.
I will take the
Fair enough. Yeah. But whether it's 6 minutes or 8 minutes, it's way under 10 minutes. And quite frankly, so Chytil came out of the lineup due to the injury. Now all of a sudden, depth at center ice, Pia Suter bumps up, Teddy Bluger bumps up, Nils Åman, who scored on Saturday. I think if he's going to stay in the NHL, it's as a winger. Faceoffs have been a huge issue for him. They were again last night. But he slides into your 4C, and Jonathan Lekramaki draws back into the lineup in a fourth-line role. And, we just talked about the other side. Like, he got swallowed up. If it was bottom line against bottom line, they got all these big brutes on the other side, and here you've got your high-skilled prospect. Didn't have a shot attempt, was not a factor. And unfortunately, on this call-up, I think of the 3 separate call-ups that he's had this year, this has looked like the least effective, and maybe maybe it speaks to the way these games are being played now, where less time and space, and got a claw for everything,
or the length of the North American season,
all those types of things. But he has just, to me, he's been really ineffective.
You've got to play him with offensive players, I think, number one, and secondly, Jeff, to your point about Nils Oman, and I know he had a good game Saturday. I think Sasson or Ratu give you a little more offensively than Nils Oman. Again, they could give you a whole lot more in time. Much like Lekkerimäki, it's unfair to lay any sort of the offensive neediness at their feet and say, solve our problem. But, Jeff, even if it's incremental, if it's a goal here, a goal there, we talked about all the one-goal games in the third period, I think you're further ahead with one of those two guys playing center ice in Chytil's absence than you are with Nils Oman.
I don't disagree, but it's also 67 games into the season. Their playoff life hanging in the balance, and we're talking about flipping Nils Oman.
I understand.
Like, this comes back to we're
into the weeds of minutia, and we're into something we should not be.
I live in those weeds, but
you sure do.
But
we're talking about something we shouldn't be talking about. But here's where we are, Jeff. So, what are the potential solutions?
Well, I think I'd take a look at Ratu certainly as a natural centerman who can generate a little bit offensively, and even though I don't love him at the NHL level, Linus Karlsson has proven that he is a very effective minor leaguer. They committed to him over the weekend. I'd feel better with him in the lineup. I thought his last call-up, he looked the part of an NHLer.
It's 1 point, though, in like 13 NHL games for him, Jeff.
But Oman was his first goal in 10 games this season at the NHL level as well. So you're right. It kind of is swapping one for the other.
And he's not the centerman, Karlsson.
No. So I'm surprised that we haven't seen Ratu.
Yeah, so am I. It's 1 goal in 13 games for Linus Karlsson over 2 NHL seasons. Our Super Chat is open, as always, for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Hit that Super Chat button. Half proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. The Blazers fan 22 wants to know, should the Canucks make a run for Gavin McKenna next season? Tank for McKenna, if you don't know Gavin McKenna. He is the presumptive first pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft. He's a forward with the Medicine Hat Tigers, playing for our old friend Willie Desjardins. And he is having one of the all-time scoring seasons for a draft -1 player. He is in the sort of McDavid Bedard vein in terms of being just an outsized point producer.
37 goals, 84 assists, 121 points in 54 games, and this follows a 97-point season.
So he's 2.5 points per game in the Western League, and he is a special hockey prospect. To answer your question, though, Blazers fan 22, no, we went through this. We went through this for years, Jeff. You're hoping to improve your draft standing, but it is very difficult from the start of a season when you're charging ticket prices that Canucks Sports Entertainment are charging, and of course many of them are going up for next year, not to mention when you have competitive people around like Rutherford, Alvin, Tocchet, and of course are hoping to re-sign Quinn Hughes. To bank all of that on being the worst team in the NHL and then just still having a 1 in 4 chance of landing the first overall pick. It is several bridges too far for me. But if you get into a predicament next year where you are losing and you are going to miss the playoffs, then I would suspect it is worthwhile long term to see if you can strip it down and add future assets.
Sure, but if we get to that point,
then Hughes may be gone anyway.
You're trading Quinn Hughes. You're trying to get assets for Quinn Hughes at that point, and
you think it's a fait accompli?
Well, I'm saying if they get to Christmas last year and it has gone completely off the rails, then the idea of bottoming out and trying, again, Canuck luck in the ping pong balls.
I still I don't even think ownership would greenlight bottoming out in that scenario. I mean, we saw how bad the team was for so many years, and they weren't greenlit to bottom out. But so no, I don't think there's going to be a Gavin McKenna watch or world here in BC with the Vancouver Canucks. We'll see. The 6-2 win against Chicago on Saturday, Petey, Garland, Suter, Sherwood, Bluger, Roenick, all with 2-point nights. But the big story is Jason Dickinson, the former Vancouver Canuck, and his hit on Filip Chytil. If you missed this, of course, there was no morning skate on Sunday because of the quick turnaround and, of course, an earlier start. So a number of the Canucks players did not get a chance to comment on that hit on Chytil until last night after the game, including Kiefer Sherwood, who was awfully strong in his prescription for Jason Dickinson next season. Let's take a listen.
It's back-to-back games that guys are taking liberties on our guys, and he's gonna have to answer the ball next year, because I know we don't play him again. Where that was a dirty hit, unnecessary 6-2, and then he doesn't have the whatever to step on the ice afterwards. We had Forby asked him, and it is what it is. We'll get him next year.
And there's been no discipline too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're seeing. We try to focus on what we can control, and we got to move forward here. It's hopefully he can. We need him, so hopefully he can recover quickly.
And if you missed, need a refresher, he's also referencing Calgary's Ryan Lomberg, who looks like he should be managed by the stanchion. Actually, he's got that vibe about him. On Quinn Hughes in the Calgary game last week.
But also Connor Zary on D-Petey.
That's right. Connor Zary on D-Petey of the elbow. Okay, Jeff, what did you think of the hit and the lack of supplemental discipline?
I hated the hit. And I think Kiefer Sherwood checked a bunch of the boxes there. It's a 6-2 hockey game. It's essentially over. There's 3 minutes to go. Not that Jason Dickinson has to take Filip Chytil's concussion history into account, but we keep talking about getting those hits out of the game and respect for players and those types of things. It was blindside. Like, Chytil couldn't have seen him coming, didn't see him coming, and it's a high, hard hit in a game that essentially is winding down. And I understand players are told to play to the final buzzer, all of that kind of stuff, but it just felt needless in that moment. And so I get the Canucks' frustration, and then the fact that the Blackhawks didn't put Dickinson back on the ice. Like, that was calculated on their part. They recognized.
They knew.
Yeah, so...
Mike, can we throw the graphic up, Rule 43? Did we have that up? Did I miss that? Okay. So let me just read Rule 43, just to be devil's advocate here. A check from behind is a check delivered on a player who is not aware of the impending hit, therefore unable to protect or defend himself, and contact is made on the back part of the body. When a player intentionally turns his body to create contact with his back, no penalty shall be assessed. Is it that second part that supplemental discipline, Department of Player Safety, and others are looking at when they give a pass to Dickinson?
Well, I thought this one qualified for blindside. Like, again, Chytil's engaged over on the sideboards, and Dickinson comes in and catches him. He doesn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm. He does turn.
Yeah.
The puck is there, and he turns. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I hate the hit, and I particularly hate the result of the hit, because you see that's a player that's in brain distress, and you just hate that for anyone who's been there before, and Filip Chytil has. You hate that, period. You just don't like seeing athletes in that condition. But I'm wondering if that's what they're leaning on.
Yeah, who knows what goes through the minds of Department of Player Safety. They got it right, I think, with the Connor Zary elbow. And
yes,
it was swift justice there, a quick turnaround.
Yep.
I didn't know, but again, we keep talking about getting these types of hits out of the game. If you let these ones just go, then there's no deterrent for Jason Dickinson, who I don't think.
And I'm all for rule change. Like,
like, Jason Dickinson doesn't have a long history of this, although interesting that earlier in the road trip in San Jose, got a lick in on Macklin Celebrini. That drew a response from Barclay Goodrow in a 6-2 game. Like, I get in Calgary the other night, stakes were high early in the game. You don't want to be taking a stupid penalty. It's 6-2. Like, to me, green. If ever there was a green light, like, how did Jason Dickinson get off the ice in that situation? I do think it's a valid criticism of this Canuck group.
Team toughness and response.
Yeah. The game has changed. I get that, but even Rick Tocchet was asked about it, and kind of bit his tongue. You knew that you knew he would like to have seen some kind of a response from his group. And I think there is a bit of a pattern here that as the season's gone along, he'll talk about the Wolfpack and team toughness, but they are not a particularly tough hockey club. They're just not.
Mm-hmm. So is that an off-season checklist item for you, or do they have the people there, they just don't have the culture?
No, I mean, I think if you sat Rick Tocchet down and he's back, I think absolutely he would love some of that. I mean, he needs scoring. Maybe you can find a guy that can do all of that stuff, but those players cost a lot of money. But yeah, I think that, Kiefer Sherwood brings it on a nightly basis. He's physical, obviously, but he's not a tough guy by the definition. It's been a tough go for Dakota Joshua, just any way you come at it. But he is one of their biggest forwards. And, 2 weeks ago, Matt, I thought we had seen some signs.
Yes, on Joshua.
And
I'm with you.
This was a weekend I thought was awfully quiet for him again. I'm really curious at the end of the season, is the hockey club just going to give him grace that this was a
off season,
a year that started with the cancer and
I
never
think they
really,
almost have to.
Yeah.
I mean, they're committed to the player for 3 more years.
But that's just it. That
or at least,
and
they've moved off players and they've moved off signings and things that they've looked at as a mistake.
It's not
but
an onerous contract, but it's not.
I would suspect they keep Joshua.
No, so do I. But I just did they just say, hey, take the summer and you come back and be the player you were last year that earned the contract? Because by any measure, 42 games, he's got 4 goals and 8 points and just hasn't been the physical force that he had been and through the playoffs when he was really good for them as well. So, this is not a big team particularly.
No.
Most of its size is on the back end.
You love Joshua's combination of size and hands. Let's remember, he has 20 goals in 3/4 of a season last year, and God, they need goal scoring. So I would think that they just give him a mulligan on the year. It was not just a surgery, quote unquote, an injury, but I imagine that goes with a whole lot of emotional and mental tax on somebody in the prime of their life, that young, healthy, to be diagnosed with cancer like that's a scary word. So I would think they're probably just going to say, hey, it was a washout season for Dakota Joshua. Because of that, we believe in him going forward. Let me ask you about a player going forward here, because it was just Wednesday after he delivered that hellacious hit and clean to Nazem Kadri in Calgary, which drew the response, Zarion. D-Petey, what's happening there?
Yeah, I think this was a coach's decision over the weekend. He skated on Friday at UBC, full practice, so that was promising that he was back on the ice as quickly as he was after leaving the game in Calgary.
They had a bit of a flu go through the team.
Yep. But by Friday, he was a full participant in practice. Saturday, they elected to go with Darragh Forbort and Victor Mancini. Now, Mancini had a fine night in Calgary. And I don't know if the decision was as simple as that, hey, we'll give D-Petey an extra day, rest and recover. I thought with back-to-backs, though, that we would see some sort of tweaking to the lineup, whether it was Forbort moving to the right side, D-Petey gets back in, or
fresh legs
the veteran
coming
Darragh
in.
Forbort comes out altogether. But I think they see the penalty-killing utility that he has brought on a nightly basis, wore a letter earlier in the week, all those types of things. I was a little surprised. Look, a week ago, this market was drunk on D-Petey, and now he can't get in the lineup. So, the door's open after a loss like this one.
I would think he plays tomorrow.
But they love their lefty-righty combinations, and, through no fault of his own, he's a left-hander. And so, I think they want Forbort to stay in there for the penalty-killing reasons. I think they like Mancini. I didn't think he was as prominent last night as he has been in some of the other games. But, no, it's, I guess, in some ways a good issue that you've got players that are, stepping in and getting the job done. And Mancini, he was patient. He had to wait there for a while to get his opportunity. But, does he have to be an everyday player? I'm not so sure at this point. But that would then mean that they go with 2 left-handers on their third pair. And, generally when they've had a righty-lefty options, they have gone that way. So, you got the Jets. They're big. They're strong. You'd probably want the physical.
Honestly,
D-Petey, but
Jeff, I might go look at Kyle Connor's first period back and say who made the mistakes there and keep those guys off the ice, given the last time they played the Jets that Kyle Connor had a field
that was
day.
A tough night for Noah Juleson, Carson Soucy. They're
right,
not here.
they're all gone.
So,
okay.
We'll see. But these rookies are going to be thrown. Now, D-Petey made his NHL debut against the Washington Capitals and looked all right there, and has faced some other tough opponents. I don't think the stage is too big for him. I hope he gets back in as well. But as I sit here today, a day before, day off, no skate today, we'll find out in the morning, how they're going to line up, and we'll see if defenseman Elias Pettersson gets back into the Canuck lineup.
How about this? Just in time for St. Paddy's Day, Yellow Dog Brewing has released their first ever 568 ml super tall cans, introducing Wolfhound Nitro Irish Stout. Big, bold, undeniably classic. The dry Irish Stout is this sessionable blend of roasted coffee, caramel, and velvet malty notes, available in both the tasting rooms and in select locations. Check private and government liquor stores. The Abbotsford Canucks, they've won 5 straight. They've moved past the Calgary Wranglers for 4th place in the AHL's Pacific Division after a 1-0 victory over Calgary. 30 saves for Nikita Tolopilo.
But even the farm team is only scoring 1 goal.
But they win,
but
Jeff.
They won. Yes, that's the difference.
Tolopilo, his 4th shutout of the season. Let's talk She Loves here for a moment, because they win the game. He's got 2 wins against Chicago this year, but he lets in 2, and there's some other squirrely saves in that.
He looked shaky early. He looked like he knew that there was some pressure on him to perform.
Catch us up, because Thatcher Demko did practice with his teammates on Friday. But catch us up on when you think the Canucks may need a backup goaltender again. And if Thatcher isn't ready, does one go to Nikita Tolopilo? Is there any chance of that, Jeff?
I'd be surprised, with 15 games remaining on the Vancouver Canucks schedule and heading out on the road here after the Winnipeg game. No more back-to-backs on this road trip. In fact, they only have one more back-to-back, and that comes up, and it's at home against Anaheim and Vegas, and it's actually a day-night home and home. It's a Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock start, and then Sunday evening. So there is a little more recovery there. But
just before we go, it's a afternoon start Saturday, huh? At the Garden
at Madison Square.
Yeah.
And the final game of the road trip in Winnipeg, which the last time they went to Winnipeg was the end of a long road trip as well, and they just got their lunch fed to them. This is the end of a 6-game road trip. That's a noon start Pacific.
Right.
So
10 a.m. Saturday, everybody,
Yes.
for JT Miller versus Elias Pettersson, which, of course, harkens Game 8 against Boston if you're talking about fireworks in the morning on a Saturday for a Canucks game.
Yeah.
But
so no back-to-backs on this road trip.
Do you think he'll play 2 different goaltenders there, or do you think if Demko's not ready, it's going to be Lankinen against St. Louis and the Rangers, even with the shorter rest time in between? You're traveling from St. Louis to New York. That is not a short trip.
Right.
And then you're on the ice at 1 p.m. Eastern after getting in at what ungodly hour you're going to get in early Friday morning.
Well, they went with Lankinen back-to-back, and he came through in Calgary. It wouldn't surprise me, because once they're in the New York area, then no travel. They're based there, days off in between games. I just don't think they would throw Tolopilo in at this stage, as long as they're in the playoff chase. And so, while Artur Silovs has not had a perfect season, I still think he's ahead of Tolopilo on the depth chart at this stage. And then to Demko, yes, he practiced on Friday at UBC.
He's got to get 2 to 4
practice.
practice.
The club was very clear to make the media well aware of the fact that this was all prescribed, that Demko's going to leave the ice here after about half an hour. So I don't want, the club didn't want to see people saying, like, Thatcher Demko has left the ice and try and start a firestorm. This was designed in his return to practice. They're going to ramp it up. But, Matt, the problem is, played Saturday, Sunday. Monday's a day off. Tuesday's a game day. Wednesday's a travel day. Thursday in St. Louis. Their next practice probably isn't until Friday in New York.
God, I hate this. Okay, and just so everyone's aware, I mean, 4 shutouts sounds great. Tolopilo has evened his record in the AHL, but it hasn't been a great season for him there either. 274 goals against 896 save percentage, 14-14-2 with those 7 shutout wins. We mentioned Linus Karlsson. Forgot to mention him Friday, his contract extension. He gets a one-way deal for next year, and good for him. 21 goals, 30 games this year for for Linus Karlsson in Abbotsford. He's, of course, become the all-time leading scorer for the Abbotsford Canucks in his third season now, well over 100. Well, he's closing in on 150 points there as an Abbotsford Canuck. Tocchet has praised him as a net front guy, a board work guy. Does he have a bottom six future, or is there just not enough defensive utility there, Jeff, and not quite enough offense that he's kind of a quad A player? What says you?
Yeah, I think the quad A is an apt description there. I was surprised that they injected him into playoff hockey last year, quite frankly. And it wasn't to generate a lot of offense. It was to use his size, be a net front. And I think the last call-up,
Tocchet does like him, though, like that much.
But on that last call-up, and he scored a goal in Nashville, but he was also the guy that was in front of the net. Before the road trip, there was a game against Washington. Quinn Hughes scored a goal. He was the net front there. Nils Höglander scored in Nashville. He was planting himself in front of the goaltender. Those are small things, but if they're leading to offense for a team that struggles to score, then maybe it's time to revisit that. Again, I don't have high hopes of him ever producing at the NHL level, but I thought good for him. He's played on two ways for all of his time here in this Canucks organization. He leaned on them and basically said, if you want me to stick around, it's going to cost you at least a one-way deal. Like, I have no issues with a player at this stage.
No,
he's apprenticed at the American Hockey League.
It's infinite. You can bury the whole thing in the minors next year. Does not count against your salary cap. And frankly, this is one of the Canucks' advantages. They have an ownership group. They drive revenues that allow them to pay these full salaries in the minor leagues, which should create depth. Last note here, our buddy Dave Hall, once again, Canucks goaltending prospect Aku Koskenvuo, who was a fifth-round pick in 2021, closes the book on his junior season at Harvard University. He stopped 39 of 41, but they couldn't score either, and Clarkson University moved past Harvard. So he stopped 88 of 95 in a best-of-3 series. The Pro Watch is now on for Koskenvuo. He's 22 years old. He finished this season at Harvard, and again, you're talking about a guy who this is Ivy League, an Ivy League team, 8-9-1, a .902 save percentage, a .281 goals against. He improved all three of his metrics, goals against and save percentage and wins, in all 3 seasons there at Harvard. He's a beanpole, a 6'4", 173-pound guy. Typically with goaltenders like this, what are we looking at? ATO here, basically PTO in the AHL, and then an ELC for next year. Sign him for next year, Jeff. You see this sometimes with goaltenders at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that would be the plan. That he's certainly not going to get a look at the NHL level. And so get him into Abbotsford, get him acclimated. They did this with D-Petey last year. He was coming from Sweden. This kid's been in North America, and he's a Harvard guy, so he might just be the smartest guy in the room sometimes.
Well, but he's also now 1 year away from a Harvard degree, right? Or for all I know, he might be advanced in his studies and be even closer than that. And needless to say, you're a fifth-round pick from Finland. Okay, do you have a chance of playing pro hockey? Yes. Mm-hmm. But what could a Harvard degree in the right field potentially mean for you career-wise and economically?
Well, and you can never have too much goaltending in your system, and I think it's really important to note that Artur Silovs, who I think the team has handled pretty well this year in terms of the shuttle from Vancouver to Abbotsford, they could because he was waiver exempt. They don't have that.
They don't have that next year, and they weren't in love with Artur Silovs' summers. In fact, the last 2 of them. So I wonder if there's something afoot there. Last bit, and again, we'll have Dave Hall on tomorrow to talk more Canucks prospects. Tom Wielander of Boston University. We did wonder if he got knocked out, might there be a world where you see him very early? Well, Boston University won on the weekend. They will play the University of Connecticut on Thursday in a Hockey East semifinal, so they're inching closer to tournament inclusion there, which would take Wielander out of the mix until April at some time. Should they make the get all the way to the Frozen Four? We shall see. Time now for our menu. It's brought to you by Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away, your steps from the arena and stadium, pregame, postgame. Check out the great street food menu, the arcade that encircles the bar. We will be there for a Canucks Army watch party in April. Stay tuned on details for that. John Shannon, Greta Bar, place to be, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. John Shannon is going to join us here. We'll talk all things Canucks with him. And then we had to go to Vancouver Whitecaps FC after this staggering start in MLS League play. They are the best team. Take a picture of it, frame it. You may not see it. The Vancouver Whitecaps are the best team at an undefeated 4-0 atop the MLS table. They beat Dallas on the weekend. They're in a CONCACAF Champions Cup quarter against a massive side from Mexico. They once again play fun, entertaining, on the ball, push forward, go for goals, chances, shots. Breed of football under new coach Jesper Sorensen. So Jayden Nelson, who has been such a catalyst for them as a midfielder. He had a game for the ages out of the hop in Portland. Got hurt, got back on the pitch on Saturday, and Canadian international, and we found out a big personality there as well. So he's coming up.
When you think of, I've only known the MLS Whitecaps to be the poster child for scratching and clawing in October and November just to get into those play-in rounds.
Right.
Now they haven't
they've had some really precipitous fades down this final stretch several times here of late.
I understand. It's 4 games. They haven't accomplished anything in the big picture, but Matt, wins in March and April mean very much, and in fact, maybe more than the wins later in the season. Build that cushion.
That's it. Because a lot of the bigger MLS sides are going to wait for future transfer windows to spend big money to bring those guys in, which makes them a more daunting opponent down the stretch. It also means they have to deal with some chemistry issues, but it also means that they're not sacrificing the early part of the schedule, but they're more gettable in the early part of the schedule than they are later. So build that cushion.
But what would it mean if you could load manage Ryan Gauld late in the season and then instead of him having to go 90 minutes all the time?
And he's hurt right now, so he's not even playing, which is another great sign for the Caps. They're doing this
despite... They're dream that they could actually set themselves up for a playoff run.
It's just been fantastic, and they're back home again on Saturday here against Chicago, so looking forward to that. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I was a big loser on the weekend, Jeff, both on the Vancouver Canucks, on the Vancouver Whitecaps and on the F1 race. So you start us, sir. What you like today?
Well, I want the Columbus Blue Jackets to make the playoffs.
Because the
Johnny story, but it's been a remarkable season for them. The outdoor game, the Stadium Series at Ohio State. They're a fun team. They score a bunch of goals, but they have fallen below the playoff bar.
Yeah.
Into this crazy 8-team race. It's frantic on the other side. We're all focused on what the Canucks are up against. It is a madhouse on the other side. Columbus.
The funny thing about that side, Jeff, is that Travis Green's Ottawa Senators are separating themselves a little bit after a big victory in the Battle of Ontario on Saturday. They've won 6 in a row. They're 5 points clear of the Rangers with 2 games in hand. They're 6 points clear of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, there's some head-to-heads there remaining that could play into it, but Travis Green's Ottawa Senators are a couple of wins away here from basically telling the rest of the field, you're fighting for 1 spot, not 2, as we had watched and suspected would be the case for all years. So good for Travis.
Peacocked out of Scotiabank there on Saturday night, go in and kick the Leafs. And
Travis, a former Leaf. Yeah.
And still an outside chance that those two could meet in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
But as for the Blue Jackets, my Blue Jackets, CBJ, they're on the wrong side of the playoff bar right now, but they're still within striking distance. They're at home to New Jersey. You never really know what you're getting with the Devils these days. Jack Hughes gone. Columbus is a home favorite. You can get them at plus 120 on the money line.
Nice value.
Go CBJ.
The NCAA basketball tournament starts this week, and there are some betting hacks. His name is Ken Palm. He's been an analyst who's looked at the analytics in college hoops. He's the guy who comes up with the net ratings. He has looked at trends for champions over the years. And here's the thing. Every single winner of this tournament has been a top 40 offensive club nationally, a top 22 defensive club nationally. There are 8 teams that meet that criteria this year. The 4 number 1 seeds, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston. 2 number 2 seeds, Michigan State and Tennessee, 4th seeded Maryland, and 8th seeded Louisville. And there was a lot of grumbling that Louisville was seeded so low. The value is on the last 2. You can get Maryland at 50-1 to win it all, Louisville at 100-1 to win it all. You're going to fill out a bracket anyways. A couple of small bets that could go a long way on your Bet365 bets of the day. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail betting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. John Shannon coming up next. So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers, and they want to send you to the Conica Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for the April 6th game against the Vegas Golden Knights. Put you in a couple of Canucks jerseys as well. If you want to win, check out the link in our episode description or on the Pacific Toyota dealers logo on CanucksArmy.com. You can follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram, Facebook, at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter a contest open to residents of BC and the Yukon. Age of majority here. And check out the Toyota BZ4X, the ideal Vancouver car, ultimate commuting vehicle. Gets access to the HOV lane, 100% electric. You plug it in at home overnight, and you never see a gas station. It's packed with the things you want in an SUV, like cargo space, fits family, friends, pets. Sports gear, can handle any terrain from the city to the slopes. And when you choose the BZ4X, you can get $6,500 in rebates and incentives. You can finance a 2025 now from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Take a test drive. Get yourself to your nearest Toyota, Pacific Toyota dealership today, or visit shoptoyota.ca. Here he is, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia. 100% Hockey, the podcast with Darren Millard, and of course, former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, John Shannon. How are you? Happy St. Paddy's.
Yeah, happy St. Paddy's to you guys too. It's it's one of those days though that I'm sure Canuck fans would rather have a win than wear green, right?
What did you make of the Canucks weekend?
Well, I think we said this last week. This homestand to me was the most important homestand of the season. They needed to come close to sweeping the homestand in addition to the game in Calgary, and then they go and lose to two teams that I think they're better than. I think they're better than Montreal. I think they're better than Utah, and they lost two games that they should have won. And so they've backed themselves into another corner as they face the best team in hockey tomorrow night, and then go on that horrendous 6-game road trip. It's a daunting task now. So last night was, well, I heard Jeff after the game. So last night was as frustrating, I think, as you've seen in a long time with the Canucks, with their fans, with inability to score goals, not going to the front of the net enough. It's a tough time right now.
Well, and we know that they've struggled to score goals pretty much all season long, and then they get 6 minutes power play time in the third period in a one-goal game. Now, they had already scored a power play goal earlier in the game, so I kind of felt like Rick Tocchet was of mixed minds. Like, it's hard to get to the podium and carve your power play when it had scored, but man, they needed one more there on those opportunities in the third.
And it was symptomatic. I think, Jeff, you're right, of what we've seen all season long. Is where was the team speed that was so effective for most of the season last year? Where is their aggressive forecheck? Where are they in the middle of the ice? So much is on the periphery. So much is on the periphery that you could see it in and hear it in Rick's voice after the game, how frustrated he was that, things just aren't clicking, and he doesn't understand why they're not clicking.
Well, let me ask you, John, it's our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. What's the main reason behind their offensive struggles? Do you think it's a lack of personnel, lack of execution, or the coach's system?
Well, wasn't it the same coach's system last year? So, I mean, to me, it's just lack of execution. To me, this is on the players. And mildly frustrating is that I think Elias Pettersson is playing better, but not many other guys are. Jake DeBrusk has got some good goal numbers, but where has Jake been the last little while? That's frustrating. I know Dakota Joshua has gone through a lot this season, and I respect that. But he's not near as competitive as he was last season, when, in my mind, they had the best third line, or one of the best third lines in hockey, with Garland and Bluger. So at a certain point, you go and say, well, where is this team? And it's funny because I spent some time with Jim Rutherford early in the season, and he said something rather interesting at that point to him. And he said that our guy, we're not sure how much our guys learned from last season, how hard it is to play, and people know how good the Canucks were last year, and nobody's given them a night off. So from that perspective, it's just, I think they've been called on the carpet by the other teams in this league, and they haven't been able to perform at that level.
When you talked about Montreal in here the other night, that top line for the Habs takes over, and that night, Rick Tocchet just throws his hands in the air after the game and says, we can't match that. It wasn't necessarily the case last night against Utah, but chips are down, third period. Logan Cooley comes through with a goal. He's one of their guys. He's one of their goal scorers there. And so that's happened way too often to the Canucks this season, is that better players on the other side have tipped games in their favor.
And both of those teams in Montreal and in Utah have been horrendous for years. Horrendous, let's be honest. They have not been near the playoffs. But they have finally drafted well, and there are some bright young stars on both of those teams. That Utah team with guys like Cooley and Dylan Guenther, and Clayton Keller's been around a long time, and then the deals that they made on their blue line and getting Sergachev out of Tampa, they're pointed in the right direction. They seem to be focused the same way, and I can't see that and say that today for the Canucks. They're not playing as in sync. They're not playing as a team. So to me, to answer the poll question simply, it's pure and utter execution, because they have the talent.
Let's and this is not meant to dismiss everything we saw last night. But Filip Chytil out of this lineup is consequential. And that is another scary hit and another scary injury, a concussion for Filip Chytil. And we all know that's one of the reasons why the New York Rangers made this player available. It's not that they didn't like him. It's that they were worried about the next hit and the next concussion. Do you think they have the horses, if Chytil's going to miss some time here, John, to get it done offensively and still make the playoffs with the lineup you see minus Chytil?
Well, you're and correct me if I'm wrong, you're going from Chytil to Lettermacki, correct? That's what you're doing?
Well, you've got Suter, you've got Bluger, you've got Nils Amon down center ice. Of course, Suter can flip over and play wings.
Well, so
it was Chytil out, Lettermacki is in terms of the straight roster substitution. But yes,
it's going to be hard. It is going to be hard. But you need the big horses pulling the big carriage. You need your stars doing more. And I don't know what more Quinn Hughes can do. I mean, let's face it, Quinn Hughes has come back. We know he's not 100%, and he has played, I think, admirably, and been a difference maker. And I mean, without him, there wouldn't have been the win in Calgary. So that's a fact. Quite frankly, I don't have any issue with. I really don't have any issue with the defense. Execution, maybe they make mistakes once, so I don't have any issue there. But this is all on the forwards. I honestly don't know what more Connor Garland can do either, because he's all in. He's tried his best to do what he can, but things are limited. Teddy Bluger's a third line guy. He's not a top six guy. He's a third line guy. So it's going to be difficult. Let's hope that Chytil can get back a little sooner than people expect. Maybe not against Winnipeg, but maybe he can be ready for the road trip.
Well, of course, they go to Madison Square early in the trip. I'm sure that's a game that he wants to be a part of and look forward to, but health before anything. So, he needs to get clearance, and we'll see. What did you make of the hit? I mean, Kiefer Sherwood had some pretty pointed comments after the game last night about Jason Dickinson and the fact that he didn't face the music. I guess for me, it was just, it's a 6-2 hockey game. Time is kind of winding down. It just felt like an unnecessary hit on Chytil by Dickinson.
I think that's fair. I mean, the last 6 minutes of that game were unnecessary. Let's face it.
Some would
so
say
with everything that's going on, just to get Connor Bedard another 10-minute misconduct. It was. And I must admit, we had George Paris on our show, 2 weeks ago. And he went through the explanation of how they get to a point of supplemental discipline. And after listening to George, I understand that everybody in Vancouver would be angry with the hit, but it did not reach that level. It did not reach the level. Was it cheap? Yeah, it was cheap. If I'm Sherwood, I'm ticked. Absolutely. But it did not reach that criteria of being suspendable. The way the rules of the game of hockey are written right now. Now, perhaps that'll be a discussion point at the managers' meetings this weekend. I doubt it, but there's always that type of thing. It was unfortunate that in the end, Chytil hit his head on the dasher. That's the bottom line. And I look forward to the next time that the Canucks and the Blackhawks play to see if there's a little bit of revenge in mind. If some of those guys that want to do revenge for the Canucks are in the lineup or on this roster next year.
John, 4 teams separated now by 2 points. The Canucks still above the playoff bar for the time being, but that can change as early as tonight. Calgary starting an Eastern road trip of its own in Toronto. Where did the St. Louis Blues come from? They're the hottest team in hockey since the Four Nations face-off. They're 9-2-2 in their last 13 hockey games. And I don't know if people have looked at their schedule. Their next 6, 3 of them against Nashville, 1 against Chicago, and they got the game on Thursday night against the Vancouver Canucks. Like, this right now feels like all the pendulum has swung completely in the St. Louis Blues direction.
And so they have 15 games left, and they have more home games available than any of those 4 other teams. Now, they haven't been very good at home, but they've been better at home of late. The players made a statement to Doug Armstrong. They went on that California swing, and Jordan Binnington said it after, I think, the game in Los Angeles, said, "We like this team. We want to stay together. Give us one last chance," basically. And that's what he's done. He's given them a chance. I mean, how many times could he have traded Braden Shen at the deadline and decided not to? So from that perspective, they are playing well. By the way, Joel Hofer, their second goaltender, has played very well in situations as well. It's not just all on Jordan Binnington. So from that perspective, you're right. They might at this point be you talk about how good the teams in the West are: Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, St. Louis. Right now, St. Louis might be the 4th best team in the Western Conference the way they're playing. And it would not surprise me, the way things turn out, that the Blues are the wild card team at this point. They would not
Binnington.
surprise me.
Binnington's still wearing the cape from Four Nations, I think.
Mark it down, Mike. St. Patty's Day, when he lost his faith in the Vancouver Canucks. We ask him weekly about.
But I told you this. I told you this homestand was important.
You did.
The homestand was important, and particularly with this awful road trip coming up. You know, I mean, you're going to play Winnipeg at home Tuesday night, and you're going to end the 6-game road trip. Guess where? In
Winnipeg.
I know.
You know, I mean, and Winnipeg's the best team in hockey right now. Winnipeg is the best team in hockey.
And they saved Connor Hellebuck last night. They went with Comrie in Seattle to make sure that Connor was fresh and ready for the Canucks here on Tuesday night.
Well, I was going to say, John, you do a lot of Jets games. So what's clicking for them? What makes them so good? What are the Canucks up against tomorrow? In advance of this game against St. Louis on Thursday, which suddenly has greater stakes. But,
well, you're going to hate it, but Luke Schen's made a difference. So he's really let Dylan Sandberg blossom on their second defense pair. Josh Morrissey is playing lights out. He played 28 minutes last night in Seattle. They still have the best line in hockey in Scheifele, Velarde, and Kyle Connor, who scored an unbelievable goal last night. Cole Perfetti has taken a lot longer to develop than people expected him to, but he's been a difference maker. You know, they've taken a ton of pressure off of Adam Lowry because of the depth of this team. So the Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton line can be the best shutdown line in the game. The other thing when you look at the Jets is Scott Arniel has been so consistent. I mean, I would tell you guys that he's changed lines less than a dozen times in 68 games. There's no line juggling. I mean, it's you go and you look at the depth chart, and it's the same lines all the time. Same lines all the time.
Wow.
Vladimir Namestnikov between Nick Ehlers and Cole Perfetti is the second line, and they've been really good. You know, so it has been remarkable, the consistency of the team, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have not had to alter any of their lineup very often.
I'm processing this. 12 line changes in a year, 12 line changes in a period, basically.
Right. What would you guys report on at practice if they weren't changing lines, Jeff?
The other thing, too, is when you mentioned Kyle Connor, John, Canuck fans remember first period natural hat-trick Kyle Connor the last time they faced the Canucks.
Well, it's a bone of contention in Winnipeg still. Kyle Connor did not dress for the Americans in the final game of the Four Nations face-off.
He's fifth in NHL scoring.
I know.
And they put Chris Kreider in instead.
Oh my God! We saw him last. They didn't take Clayton Keller either, who has surged since his omission from the U.S. team. Lastly, is there anything you want to see done at the or recommended at the GM's meetings, whether it's goaltender interference or?
Well, I think that's the number one thing. There has to be a level of consistency with goaltender interference. I was around hockey night in 1999 when we went through the Brett Hull incident, toe in the crease in Buffalo. That people in Buffalo still yell about. But there seems to be, outside of the situation room, there seems to be a lack of understanding of what is or isn't goaltender interference. And there needs to be clarity. That, to me, that's the only issue facing the National Hockey League right now, is how to create some subjective standard for goaltender interference that everyone understands. Because other than that, I think the game's in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Good stuff, John. Well, thank you for this, sir. I appreciate you switching days on us for this week. We will catch up next Tuesday.
Well, I'll do anything just to avoid Blake after he yelled at me last week.
Yeah, it's true. They got into it last week. Yeah.
Kinder, friendlier co-host today.
I was going to say, yeah.
Well, as a guy from Kamloops, how can you blame him? Come on.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center in Canada. Your favorite contest is back. Roll Up to Win is back at Tim Hortons, and that means you win millions of amazing prizes with just the swipe of a thumb. Imagine turning your routine Tim's run into an unforgettable vacation with Sell-Off Vacations, a $1,000 racket and cash prize, or an all-new, all-electric 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz. Even the simple joy of winning a free coffee or a donut can make anyone's day. You have until March 23rd, so open up that Tim's app and get rolling. This is our game, Canada, so don't let this chance and millions of amazing prizes pass you by. Play Roll Up to Win on the Tim's app now. Rules apply, Canada only, no purchase necessary. Visit the Tim's app for details. Well, they were at it again, Jeff. All they do is win this year. 1-0 at Dallas on Saturday. Vancouver Whitecaps FC are the talk of Major League Soccer, the only unblemished team at 4-0, leading the Western Conference, and of course still alive in CONCACAF Champions Cup, where they're into the quarters. It's been an extraordinary story, and this young man has been one of the catalysts. Here is Caps midfielder and Canadian international. First time on our program. A delight to welcome Mr. Jayden Nelson.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for helping me.
Well, thank you for the time here today, sir. You guys have played a lot of soccer. I know you're just back from injury, but what do you make of this amazing run you guys have been on?
Yeah, like you said, it's been I think 8 games in 24 days, so that's a lot of football, you know. So it's just been amazing, you know. I came in right around the end of preseason where like connections already formed and whatnot, and I just joined the group and fit right in. And that's just hats off to the group in the locker room. Honestly, this is probably the best team I've been on in terms of like how good guys are in the locker room and in terms of in the workspace, you know. So I'm delighted to be here, and we need to keep going, you know, and get this Vancouver Whitecaps really out there.
New coach, new players, a lot of changes. How are you guys doing it, Jayden? How has it clicked this quickly, this fast?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's just good guys being in the building, you know, and I think it just stems from that. We all have the same goal. Like, we watched, like, all the pundits really put us very, very low in terms of every, like, statistic that you could think of, you know, so we really have a chip on our shoulder. And you can see that when we play. So we just need to continue going to remain humble and continue winning.
Come clean for us here. Have you allowed yourself to look at the table? Like, I mean, there are the Whitecaps at 4-0 in league play. Nobody around them. I know it's early, but still, like, that's a sight to see when a team is off to a 4-0 start.
Yeah, it's something that you wouldn't think of when you think of, like, Whitecaps, you know? And you know, we want to change that narrative, right? So it's something that, like I said, we have a chip on our shoulder, and you just want to continue this run and try to do our best for the city.
You paint a picture of a locker room, obviously, that is very much in lockstep, and I'm sure the vibe check is pretty high right now. What does it do for a group when you spread the scoring the way that you have to get as many guys feeling good about their games and feeling like they're contributing this early in the season?
Exactly. I think the best way to say is that, you know, everyone feels good, you know, and I think that's the best way to do it. And we're very grateful for that as well, because maybe if you look at last season, you just see Brian White and then Ryan Gould score all the goals, you know. So now it's everyone, it's mostly our defenders as well. So a lot of confidence is flowing in the change room, and that brings out, I'll say, personalities, you know, and the best out of everyone. So all around, it's just great.
Gould has missed time. Sam's missed time. You missed time. Ocampo had a suspension. It seems like there's also a next man up mentality here with this side.
Yeah, and that's something that I didn't really see when I was in the MLS before. We have young guys that are ready to contribute. You can see, like, Tate Johnson came on and he bagged himself a goal right off his debut, you know. So guys are here and guys are ready. Guys are doing what they need to do off the pitch to really stay healthy, to really stay ready, and that's the most you can ask for.
Tell us about your season, Jayden. All those goal contributions are early, and then you got a knock. I know you returned on the weekend, but it seems like a dream start for you coming over to Vancouver from TFC. Tell us about your year.
Yeah, it's been a difficult year, I would say, or prior. Been a rough 6 months in Germany, but when I got the call from Whitecaps, I was like, yeah, I think it's a group that I wanted to join. It's a group that are making a lot of changes, and we're doing well in the last 3 years, you could say. So I think it was perfect timing, and yeah, to have a game like that in Portland, it's like a dream come true. I used to dream about, dominating a game like that. Like, I'll be honest with you guys, it felt like I was playing a video game. So to come off the pitch with like 3 assists, 1 goal, it's something that I could even dream about, honestly. So it's
Yeah.
just amazing.
And you were telling us, because you played for TFC a number of years ago, I was telling you, boy, it seemed like an angry crowd there at TFC. And you were saying, yeah, there's quite a difference in atmosphere these days between Vancouver and Toronto.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to see. Like, I'm a fan. I'll say that. I'm a fan. Like, I grew up there. Like, you can say that's my home, but it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. It's hard to see the fans, turning that way. And I just hope everything turns around over there, but not as fast as to beat Vancouver. So
Right, that's
we're
right.
we're moving full speed ahead. So they have a lot of catching up to do.
All wins are good wins. I wonder, though, do you guys internally feel like you made a statement on opening day in Portland with that kind of performance and how convincing that win was?
Yeah, for sure. But I'll be honest with you guys, like, as soon as we win, we get back in the locker room. Yes, we enjoy, like, I'll say, for the first 24 hours. But when we're back in the building, we're humble, and we're ready for the next one. Like, that game is already behind us, so that's the mentality, and I think that's the mentality we need to have to continue this. So I think we're on a steady path right now.
I know you've played a lot of road games, and of course, training camp was in Spain, but you're starting to get introduced to the city. You're starting to find your spots. Tell us about Jayden Nelson and life in Vancouver these days.
Yeah. I'm starting to figure out the cafes, all the different restaurants. I'm getting a lot of suggestions, but I have a long way to go. So if you guys have any suggestions, yeah, definitely send them my way.
Sure, we got plenty. Last question here, Jayden, but what are you up against Saturday against the Chicago Fire, and what are your thoughts about pushing this to 5-0?
Yeah, I have a teammate that I used to play with in Norway, so and he's a center back, so I'll be going up against him, and yeah, so I have a little, I'll say, a chip on my shoulder as well to beat him, but yeah, we're just going with the same mentality. Yes, we're missing some guys, but like I said, we have guys that are ready to step up, and there's no doubt in our mind that we could get the win at home, so we're just going full speed ahead.
Well, it's Saturday at 7:30 at BC Place against Chicago. Then the aforementioned TFC at their park a week from Saturday. And then comes that big two-leg aggregate against Pumas, the first game here at BC Place on April 2nd. You guys have been so much fun to watch, Jayden, especially with you guys on the ball attacking. It's been really a delight. Thank you for the time here today, sir. Nice to finally meet you, and we'll catch up here down the stretch.
Thank you, guys.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you extend your game night with a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Book a Harrison Price exclusive rate here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you. Some blackout date supply based on availability. This segment, a presentation of Resurrection Spirits, who have partnered up and created the Harrison Price Gin.
Mm-hmm.
Checking the levels of the bottles back here, Jeff. I know you guys have had some long nights on Rinkwide.
We have, yes.
Made in East Vancouver. Got to find some entertainment somewhere. Made in East Vancouver using BC ingredients, triple distilled 100% organic rye grain, 5 timeless botanicals. Here it is a gin with character, designed for those who appreciate craftsmanship in every pour. Use code SNP, S the and symbol, P, for $5 off at resurrectionspirits.ca. Get in while you can. Limited edition run here. Once they're gone, they're gone. Well, talk to Jaden Nelson, and this is just an extraordinary story emerging here. The Whitecaps are the only unblemished team in MLS. They've got a 4-point cushion atop the West. They can
That's the craziest part. like there's 3 other teams at 2-0-2. They're off to nice starts.
Yeah.
But they have built themselves a buffer already.
It's unbelievable. Pedro Vite playing in Ryan Gauld's role. Let's remember their working class MVP has been out here for a bit. Sabby, the big offseason addition, hasn't played. And they also have some roster and cap flexibility. They can add a couple of more of these U22s or a U22 and a traditional designated player. Berhalter, Nagando, like the improvements are visible. Goals from infrequent scorers and positions. It's all turning up Whitecaps here, everybody. And chance to see them Saturday, 7:30 against Chicago at BC Place. They will be without Brian White and Ali Ahmed, both of them on international duty for the United States and Canada, respectively.
But just, like, seriously, if you have a moment today, click on MLS or the Whitecaps webpage. Just look at the table and bask for a few minutes. Like, it is crazy.
Absolutely.
And to think they're doing it with this compressed schedule as well.
They have been so busy because of their advancement in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And the beat goes on here. And, of course, we're going to see them play Pumas here in early April in a 2-leg aggregate to advance to the semifinals of CONCACAF Champions Cup. An extraordinary job being done here by Jesper Sorensen and the Whitecaps. BC Lions have news here. Wide receiver Alexander Hollins. He is going to receive his $75,000 roster bonus after the CFLPA filed and won a grievance. He was released in January, 1 month after knee surgery. You can't release injured veterans if they're still on the mend. So there's 3 different ways this could go now. Hollins could go back to BC and earn what he was originally scheduled, which is $233,000, nearly $234,000, plus some statistical bonus money there. He would have to pass his physical at training camp to be on the line for that. Hollins and the club can come to terms on a different deal at this stage of the game. And, of course, BC's pot committed here to the tune of $75,000. So you see if there's any interest there. And then they could just continue on as they foresaw and release him, pay out his bonus, and then he would be on the lookout for work elsewhere in the Canadian Football League.
Boy, he was good, really good for them 2 seasons
years
ago.
He was great. Mm-hmm.
They had one of the best receiving cores in the CFL. He maybe wasn't the biggest name, but my goodness, was he dependable, reliable, durable.
Stretched the field, too. I mean, the deep threat, he was a lot of fun a couple of years ago. If you have confidence in that knee, if you're already committed to $75,000, I do wonder. But, of course, this comes so late in the free agency window. It's hard to account for a salary of that size. We'll see what Ryan Rigmaid and the new general manager of the BC Lions decides to do there. Congrats to the UVic Vikings and the University of Saskatchewan Huskies, the men's and women's champions at the U Sport Final 8 basketball championships at UBC. I was there pretty much all weekend. I know you were there on, was it?
Well, I was there to cover Canucks
practice on Friday.
And it was a busy place.
Yeah, it was.
Basketball taking over Doug Mitchell, so Canucks were on one of the side sheets. But even for the Canucks, they had to use like the minor hockey dressing rooms because the varsity rooms weren't the ones that they usually use when they skate at UBC. They weren't available. So, busy times out there on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And around here at the Wall Center.
Yes, all the teams were staying here at the Wall Center.
Lots of tall people.
Great seeing the tapestry of colors of all the participating teams at UBC and here at the Wall Center, and UVic winning a basketball champion. Like old times. Ken and Kathy Shields and the great programs they forged there on the island. UVic, I think, was the best team all year and a very deserving champion. Sadly, was there yesterday. My Carleton Ravens couldn't repeat as the women's champions, but Saskatchewan was extraordinary. They played an awesome game in the semi against UBC, and they were even better yesterday. Doug Mitchell, so good on offense, just made plays and buckets from everywhere on the court. Rory McIlroy, he holds off former Mackenzie Canadian Tour champ J.J. Spawn in a 3-hole Monday playoff to win the Players. It's not a major, so it doesn't break his now 11-year drought between majors, Jeff. But it's the next closest thing, the 5th major that they call it. And look, Look, the PGA Tour is diluted. We can all argue that. You take a look at that live leaderboard this weekend and who was near the top, and there's some substantial names there. Some of them will be at Augusta. Great thing for the PGA Tour that their biggest name wins one of their biggest tournaments. And now we'll see if Rory can carry that into Augusta or the U.S. Open, PGA Championship, Open Championship, which is, of course, what he really wants in season 2025.
Yeah, I mean, this is truly David versus Goliath in a playoff like this one. Don't feel too sorry for J.J. Spawn. I think he made $2.5 million as the runner-up, one of the biggest purses out on tour. But for Rory, won at Pebble, put on a clinic on the final Sunday at Pebble. He's got a gear that other guys just don't have. His tee shot on the first playoff hole, 16, the par 5, just absolutely stripes it over the trees, left him 175 yards in. He makes birdie there. How he didn't birdie 16 on Sunday, I mean, he could have avoided the playoff altogether. That was one of the surprises to me. And then J.J. Spawn puts it in the water deep on 17 over the back of the island green. And at that point, it was a formality. So, I mean, good for Rory McIlroy, certainly in good form as he heads to Augusta here in a couple of weeks.
And so is Corey Connors. T5 here. He was T3 the week before. I mean, Taylor wins some big tournaments in dramatic fashion, but I think Corey continues to sort of separate himself as the best player from the Canadian contingent. One of the best iron players in the world. Boy, if a few more putts drop for him, Jeff, you just wonder what his career could look like. Anyways, he's playing well heading into the major championship season in golf. And sad news down the I-5 where Seattle sports legend Donald Slick Watts, dead at age 73 late last week. I saw Bob Condata, the Seattle Times, tweet, for a 3 to 4 year span in the 70s, there was no bigger sports hero in Seattle than Slick Watts, and then he remained one of the city's greatest sports ambassadors for the rest of his life. He led the NBA in assists and steals as the Sonics point guard in 75-76. Left just before they won their lone championship in 1979 under Lenny Wilkins.
Right, Lenny Wilkins and Jack Sikma and that era. And that Sonics team is still so revered in Seattle. And, they got to cut
their
down
only
the nets.
champion until the Seahawks, right?
I mean.
Yeah.
So, it was a big deal then. I remember as a kid, sort of my infancy coming to sports and just got all the Seattle stations pumped into Vancouver. And those Sonics teams were massive.
And Slick Watts was a very entertaining character on the court and off. A football injury as a youth in itty-bitty small-town Mississippi didn't allow him to grow hair everywhere. It grew in patches, so he decided, I'm going to shave it off. I'm going to start wearing headbands. They became his trademark, and so he was ubiquitous. I mean, you saw a guy in a headband, a bald head at a Seattle basketball event. You know it was Slick Watts. He had time for everybody. Terrific story between an athlete who moves across the country, comes, the hometown adopts him, the new hometown adopts him, he adopts the new hometown, and gone too soon at age 73. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Friday. Jeff, we asked them, do you believe in just get in and anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs? First, give me did we ask you this on Friday? No. I don't think we did. What's your take on that?
I'm not a believer. I mean, every so often you get the Los Angeles Kings of 2012, that this 8th seed that's truly a machine. But people have to remember that team, like the St. Louis Blues that came out of nowhere to win in 2019, it cost the head coach his job. There was collateral damage there before they got things straightened out. But no, I'm not a believer in when and anything can happen. Dare to dream, I suppose, but I'm saying that no carried the day.
Yeah, no carried the day. It got 57% of the vote. Chetty, yes, you can, but not with this roster the Canucks have. No depth, and their top six is extremely weak compared to the other teams. Dave, unless you have a Vezina or a Conn Smythe goaltender, the goaltending can float you. Canucks stand, yes, anything could happen. Still incredibly unlikely, and dumb thing to hope for. Well, Helmut took the bait. He says, I don't actually believe it, but I want to believe it. Hope may not be a plan, but it's all a Canucks fan has these days. Errors and omissions from last Friday's program. First of all, we didn't have a title on our show, Mike.
Oh, that's an omission.
What? Well, we fired the show on Friday. It didn't have a title. Mentioned Linus Karlsson today. Forgot to mention his contract extension on Friday. Apologies, Linus. And Yerke is calling me. I said the Canucks were good around the 94 run. He points out that in 95, yes, they were a second-place team in the Smythe, but it was a very weak division that last year, and they actually were a game worse than they were in 94. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Thanks, Jeff. And keep it local.